as a narrow infrasternal angle, I am going to be taking a long, relaxed, exaggerated sigh. Think fogging up the glass window. However, I get to a point where nothing is happening, or I actually feel like my sternum is collapsing inward, causing an almost out-of-breath sensation. Like Take My Breath Away, like that 90s song, but way less cool. Any idea what this might be? We want to be seeing the lower ribs dropping down, correct? Yes. What if upon an exhale they don't move? We got a lot going on here, Sean, but don't worry, your boy Big Z is going to have you taken care of. Sean, by the way, has a great haircut. Let's pack this down a couple things. What should we see first when we complete a full exhale? When you exhale, you want to see everything within the ventral cavity get smaller. You're going to see things coming together like that cool Beatles song. You want internal rotation. If we zoom in to the ab wall and the lower rib cage, you should see the ab wall get smaller in all directions, and you should see the lower rib cage get smaller in all directions. It should move down, back, and in. So in this case, if folks, I have a difficult time making it smaller, you might see some compensatory activity going on, which is the sternum dipping down. And this goes back to what I talked about with Jim's question, relative motion loss. So what's happening with my main man, Sean, is he's exhaling, he's trying to get the air out. He can't for whatever reason. And so then what happens is the thorax locks in as one unit, and it tilts anteriorly, which causes that sternum to depress. What this does is it allows rectus, damn near kill this, abdominis to concentrically orient to help my main man Sean get a little bit more air out. But this is undesirable. We don't want that because we've had a loss of relative motion, and also too, it's not going to allow you to maximally get air out of the thorax as well. No bueno. So we don't want the sternum depressing. We want the sternum getting smaller because, folks, when the sternum depresses, the posterior aspect of the thorax expands in like one or two segments, not completely compresses. So if I'm creating expansion posteriorly when it should be getting smaller, well, that's not an exhale. You fail at the exhale. We want to fix that. So if you see the pump handle getting down, the sternum depressing, that's going to negatively impact your ability to create an exhale. Problems ensue, and that's probably why Sean gets that out-of-breath sensation, is because it seals off the exhale too soon. And it probably plays into what he's saying he's not getting, which is the lower rib cage isn't moving. Ideally, when you exhale, if we go back to what the bucket handle is, the bucket handle, we should see the ribs move outward and upward during inhalation, and then as we exhale, we should see it move downward and inward. So if we're not seeing that downward and inward movement, you'll have compensatory activity happen. So it may be that Sean can't get the exhale to be full enough that we get that rib cage to move. Now, folks, sometimes you'll see individuals, they will make the ab wall smaller, which is something that I spend a great deal of time coaching, but they might not be able to generate enough tension in the ab wall to drop the lower rib cage as well. Perhaps they can't kick in the deep abs. This is very common, especially if you're coaching someone with the stack to have a really slow, drawn-out sigh, and they want the exhale to be very relaxed, and we want the lower abs to get smaller, because a lot of times when you exhale too forcefully, the lower abs will actually get bigger, and that has to go with the sternal depression. So what do you do there? What you can do there to assist in the lower rib cage coming down is add a reach on top of it. This is one time where instead of getting the full exhale, pausing and working on the inhale, that I'll skip the inhale portion. And by skip, I mean skip focusing on the inhale portion, and add something in the mix to get that full exhale to happen. Because think about it, folks. The way that I recommend doing the stack, which is get the tuck first, get a full exhale, keep the ab tension during a pause and an inhale, then reach, is if you're not getting lower rib cage movement, then you're not getting a full exhale. So you need to do something to get a full exhale. A reach is like an icing on the stack cake. Sometimes you got to eat the frosting before you get into the bunch of the cake. Nothing but cakes, get it? So adding a reach, if you're narrow, which would be forward, or if you're wide, which would be 110, 120, that can actually be really useful at helping you get that last little bit of rib cage closure, because it just amplifies the intensity enough that it can bias the abs. And also, too, when you perform those reaches, a narrow reaching forward and a wide reaching at like 110, 120, it helps alter the shape of the rib cage from the top down. Because when I reach forward, I get smushing of the rib cage front side and back side, which allows for lateral expansion. We need that if we're a narrow. And then for a wide, if I reach at that 110, 120, it biases serratus to create a lateral squish to get A to P expansion. So both of those will help alter the shape of the rib cage, but it leads to a trickle-down effect. That can be a great way to get the lower ribs to move. To summarize your great question, Sean, the sternum's collapsing is because you can't get an adequate exhale. We want the ab wall to get smaller and the ribs to drop down, back, and in. If you're not doing that, you got to just make sure you focus on getting that full exhale. And then if the ribs aren't moving, add a reach into the mix. And if you do that, no one will mess with you.